So, ahoy. Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Rodrigo Díaz, and I'm going to talk about the serverless platform in Microsoft, in Azure. Um, I'm a Microsoft Regional Director from Mexico, and I Microsoft MVP since 10 years ago, nowadays in the Developer Technologies category. And also I have my own company where we create telemedicine solutions. This is a healthcare where we are changing people's lives in Mexico. And well, today I'm going to talk about serverless, what it means for us developers, what it means for us architects, and what it means to companies, and why it's important to know this new application model, and what are some of the products and services that Microsoft provides in the Azure space. So first of all, I want to tell you some fun facts about my session. The first one, fun fact number one, is that us Microsoft regional directors, we are not directors of anything, and we are not regional of any kind of place. But Microsoft considers us like some group of advisors in our own countries. Actually, here at Update Conference, you can meet a bunch of regional directors that are speaking here in the conference, like Richard, like Julie, TV, there's Tomas right there, here's me. And that's fun fact number one. Fun fact number two, I'm from Mexico City, and one of the most commercially expensive streets in Mexico City is named after Tomas Masaryk, who was the first president of Czechoslovakia. You know the story, of course. And in this street, you can find all the luxury shops like Gucci and Louis Vuitton and Ferrari and Maserati and those kind of expensive things. And fun fact number three, when I was leaving my home to go to the airport to fly here to Prague, I broke my left toe, and I immediately called the doctor and said that I broke my toe. He asked if, hey, it hurts? Yes, of course it hurts. And can you walk? Yes, I can walk. Okay, go for it. And see you in 2 weeks. So I don't know if I should change my doctor. This is a true story. This is the picture of my left toe from today. It's disgusting, I know. I'm sorry because you just had lunch right now. So that's true story. So, but it hurts, but it's a little, it's like a funny feeling in my foot. Anyways, the agenda for today is we're going to talk about the evolution of application platforms regarding the before and the after the cloud. We're going to talk about what is serverless and what are some products and services that Microsoft offers in the Azure space, for that matter, for serverless, and a bunch of demos that I prepared for you. I hope I had the time. I will have the time. And finally, as a summary at the end of the session. So if we think how application platforms have evolved in the past few years, we have to divide the story of computing the before and after the cloud. Why? Because the cloud has enabled us a lot of different things. If you think about it, how we created software in the past few years, we created software as a maybe a box product, and we gave the software to our users maybe in diskettes, right? Or maybe in USB drives or zip drives. or CD-ROMs, what have you. But the cloud is changing the way how we design and architect our solutions. This is, for example, with the arrival, first of all, the on-premises scenario. This is the scenario I'm talking about. In that particular space, we created our product, and we have to manage all the things in our servers. We have to manage all the operating systems, patching on all the operating system installs and service packs. And if a memory module fails, you have to change it. You know, that the scenario. And with the arrival of the cloud, there are many, many things that have changed. For example, the infrastructure as a service application model is something that is very important for us developers and architects, because it mitigated and it solved a lot of things about the hardware in our servers. You don't have to manage the operating systems. You don't have to patch your operating systems. You don't have to install the Service Pack 1 Golden Edition plus beta. Do you remember that in the Windows NT story or Windows Server story? So, of course, infrastructure as a service solved some problems, but not everything is solved in infrastructure as a service. What you're doing is renting other people's servers, right? You're only using other people's or other companies' hardware. In the other hand, for most companies and software developers and software architects, this is very important, because it's the first step, or it could be the first step to go to the cloud. A lot of companies, I don't know here in Czech Republic, but in Mexico and Latin America, a lot of companies are in the on-premises space or are in the hybrid space. They don't go fully to the cloud, because all the privacy, you know, all the privacy problems that it comes together with the cloud, and some legal stuff around maybe some vertical spaces like healthcare or government, or I don't know, government itself is very suspicious about the cloud. So the infrastructure as a service, first step is, for most companies, is the way to go to embrace the cloud. And infrastructure as a service is very important, and this tendency of building data centers around the world is growing. One of the examples of this fact is that Microsoft is creating data centers underwater, like the underwater data center in the sea near Scotland. I don't know if you hear about this, but this is fascinating, right? It's, the sea is going to be the cloud. I don't know if it's going to be the cloud or the sea in the next few years. Anyways, then it came platform as a service, or PaaS. And of course, with this kind of application model, most of the complexity was solved. Most of the complexity of managing the servers, managing the hardware, changing the memory modules, changing the disks, managing the disk space, etc., was solved. But not everything was solved with platform as a service. You still have to manage a lot of things, like you have to choose what kind of CPUs you're going to use. You have to choose how much memory you want to use for certain service or certain product. And but it's a good step further this cloud path. Here in platform as a service, you can find, for example, SQL database or Azure Cosmos DB offerings, all that kind of different products and services that Microsoft offers. Of course, this is not a comprehensive list. It's just a small part of Azure. As we know, Azure is growing like daily, They have like, I don't know if thousand, but hundreds of services that Microsoft is creating around AI, or around data analytics, and around different topics. So even with platform as a service, we still have to take in consideration lots of things. For example, how many servers do I need? That's one of the classic questions we get when we are creating software. Or which operating system should I use? What size of servers should I buy? Etc. etc. That's exactly why serverless was born. Okay, so what is serverless? Serverless is a complete abstraction of servers. This is, you don't have to think about the hardware where your software is running on. You don't have to worry about the operating system, the underlying operating system, or the updates that the operating system should have. You only have to focus on your product. You only have to focus on your solution. If you're building, for example, healthcare solutions here in Czech Republic, you only have to focus on that particular matter. Or if you're building, I don't know, maybe some agricultural or maybe manufacturing solutions, you only have to focus on that kind of solutions. One of the main traits of serverless is that it's event-based. This is very interesting because it changes your mind how you design and architect software. What I mean is that there are a bunch of events in the back end that are firing, and you can subscribe to those events in order to respond to those events. I'm going to show you some Azure Functions, and I'm going to write some code, and I'm going to show you some other products that exactly do this functionality. Other trait is that when you have a serverless solution, you don't have to worry about the scalability. The scalability of those compute resources are automatically created for you. You don't over-provide or under-provide compute resources. They are just created for you. That's what I mean with the immediate scalability. So you don't have to worry about costs. You don't have to worry about buying some more servers or what have you. And the last trait I want to talk about today is micro-billing. With a serverless solution, you only pay for what you use. Of course, the cloud is not free. We know that. And of course, your servers, if you buy a rack of servers for your company, of course, they are very costly. So with a serverless solution, the total cost of ownership of a software project could be less than if you go and buy the hardware yourself or use infrastructure as a service for that matter. So I'm going to talk about a little bit more about this thing later on in this talk. So 4 traits I want you to think about serverless. Complete abstraction of servers. Serverless is event-based, and there is immediate scalability for your compute resources, and you only pay for what you use. 4 traits. Of course, there are pros and cons when you embrace this kind of architectures and way of thinking. The pros side of things is that, of course, you don't have to manage servers yourself. You're getting free of that responsibility. And of course, lower cost, as I just said a minute ago. And maybe you have to write less code if we compare it to a full-blown solution like a traditional architecture solution. And you don't have to manage servers, of course, but you don't have to manage as well all that kind of different services and those, I don't know, service buses and all those things that are implemented in the backend for our solutions. So maybe you get less ops responsibility as well. Scalability is another of the pros I wanted to tell you today. But of course, there are cons, and one of them, the biggest one, is the vendor lock-in. This is that if you create, for example, some Azure functions or create some components using the Azure way of thinking, you can't deploy that same functions in another cloud. You are locked into Azure when you create this kind of applications. Of course, it's the same thing if you go and embrace Amazon Web Services or the Google Cloud Platform or IBM OpenWhisk. Those different clouds that offer the serverless components, of course, you are locked in as well. So this is the a big con. But of course, it will depend on your solution. It's not like a critical for most projects. For other kind of projects, it might be very, very critical. Decentralization is another con. This is, we all know about the distributed computing problems that we get when we create these kind of things. For example, the latency that you have to fight with between components when one component is in one server and one component is in another server. That's a problem that you have to solve. And transactions is another problem that you have to solve when things are decentralized. And of course, it's not specific to serverless. It's something that you have to think about when you create distributed architectures as well. And of course, serverless is not for everyone or for every project. This is very important. Serverless is very common today and is a buzzword nowadays. And there are a lot of hype, right? A lot of hype around serverless in Microsoft space, Amazon space, Google space as well. So you have to be very careful in order to decide if serverless is good for your project. In my particular experience, it is very good for some projects, and it's like impossible for other kind of projects. When we're talking about government, again, because I'm very involved with the Mexican government in the healthcare space, it's like impossible to use these kind of things because there is no cloud. Cloud is forbidden specifically for healthcare. So some projects could be benefited from serverless, and other projects maybe it's going to be impossible, like I'm saying. So regarding the serverless offering in Microsoft Azure, I want to speak about some of the products and services that Microsoft provides. The first one is Azure Functions. These Azure Functions are like, it's code that runs on demand on the server. And you can write those functions using C# or F# or JavaScript or Node.js or PowerShell. A lot of different programming languages are supported right now. And the Azure Function have flexible model. We're going to see that. I'm going to do some demos around Azure Functions. The next one is Azure Logic Apps. This service is designer. It's a visual designer that allows you to design, of course, workflows and orchestrations around services. It's a very, very interesting thing that I'm going to show you as well. Azure Event Grid is the third service that I want to talk about. In Event Grid is where you manage all your events in Azure. This is like a surface of a bunch of events that are firing and a lot of applications are subscribing to. Azure Event Grid ensures that the events go to the subscribers in a trusted fashion. The fourth one is something that I'm sure is serverless, and it might be that another speaker says that it's not serverless. For me, it's serverless. That's why it has the, according to me, seal of approval. The name is Azure Container Instances. This service is awesome. It allows you to take a Docker container and instantiate the container in a public endpoint in Azure. Very, very fast. It allows you a lot of different things. It's not a full-blown orchestrator. It just allows you to run a container and expose an endpoint for it. It's very, very interesting for DevOps purposes, for example. And the last one is Azure Service Fabric Mesh. This is a new product from Microsoft. Azure Service Fabric Mesh is a platform for microservices, but serverless. This is, you want to create microservices that are based on containers, but you don't have to manage the servers and the clusters and those kind of things. It's a serverless microservices platform. I'm going to do a demo as well. So let's talk about Azure Functions. As I said, these kind of components are on-demand, fully managed serverless code. It's C# code or F# code that you write in different languages, and it allows you to scale automatically and on demand. Let me do the first demo for these components. There are two ways that we can use to create Azure Functions. Here in your Azure portal, if you go to the Create a Resource and search for function, you're going to see, I'm sorry about that. Something is wrong with the screen. It's not, sorry. So, okay, so if you go to your portal in Azure and search for function here in the marketplace, you will see that you have the functions application. Let me see what's going on here. We have our own Wi-Fi also speakers, but I think I'm going to use the public one because I think this is a little bit slow. Let me connect. Maybe somebody is downloading Windows 10 or something. It happens. Okay. Let's see, ping, Yahoo, no, cable, yeah, plan B, cable, okay, so, okay, and let's see. Okay, there you are. Sorry about that. Here's the function app template. And if you select this template and click on create, you are presented with some options about the function app that you want to create. This function application is, you can think about it like a group of functions. It's not the function itself. I'm going to write the function by code in the portal in the next few minutes, but this is just a group of functions. So you have to select the name that you want. Let's say if I choose update conference, something like this. And some other things like, for example, what is your resource group that you want to, where you want to create this function app. And you need to select this these options, like for example, what is the location of the region that you want to use for this particular object, and if you want to use .NET or want to use Java or JavaScript. I'm going to select all the defaults except for this one because this is closer than South United States. So I'm going to choose create. And what it's doing right now, Azure is creating this group of functions. It's going to create an empty group of functions right now. The other, in the meantime, I'm going to show you the second way. The second way is to use Visual Studio 2017. And when you have installed the Azure Functions tools and extension, you are presented with this template when you create file new, when you select file new project. You can select the Azure Functions template and type a name. Let me just type the function app 2. That's fine. Okay. And this is running still. Okay. So the second part, I'm doing it right now in two ways, via the portal and via Visual Studio. It's the same. Of course, there is some differences between the portal and Visual Studio. Of course, if you want to debug the function, you have to use Visual Studio. You can't debug a function inside the portal, for example. But okay, so here you are presented with some options that represent how you can or how you want to fire this particular function. These objects are named triggers, and I'm going to select the first one, this one, HTTP trigger. This is that I want to react when a HTTP request comes to my function. I want to activate it immediately. For those of you that are C# developers, as myself, you can see that the code is very straightforward. What is happening here is that Visual Studio is downloading some Nugget packages for me. And if we see the code, we can see that it's very easy to understand. First of all, we have these two parameters in the method. The first one is named rec, is of type HTTP request. This is the request that arrives to your endpoint. And what it's doing here is that inspecting the request to see if a name parameter is in the query string or in the body of the request. And if there is a name parameter in the query string or in the body, I'm going to say hello. If there is no name value, I'm going to say, please pass name on the query string or in the request body. It's super easy to understand. And if we run a function in the Visual Studio IDE, when you have installed all the Azure Functions SDK, you can see that you can emulate the functions in your own machine. I'm going to allow the access there, okay? So I'm running the function, I'm debugging the function right now, and I'm presented with the endpoint that I can use to run the function. It's the localhost port 7071 API function 1. So I'm going to open this browser and just run this. I'm going to do the request to the endpoint, and I'm presented with the message, please pass a name on the query string or in the request body, of course, because as we saw in the code, I need to pass the parameter. I'm doing it right now, okay? So here's the result for that particular function. Of course, it's just a code only. It's like hello world kind of Azure function right now. And if I go back to the portal, I'm going to do it the other way. As I told you, this is just a group of functions, and I'm going to, let me share, what was the name? All resources. So it says that it deployed correctly. So it's fine. I'm going to reuse this function. I'm going to stop this in Visual Studio, and I can publish this function right here using Visual Studio options and publish straight to the to my Azure account. So I'm going to select existing, and this is going to read all my resources in my different subscriptions, and I'm going to select this, the function application that I created in the portal, and I'm going to choose OK, and Visual Studio is going to deploy the function to the portal, and basically it's an easy way to create this kind of components and publish them to your cloud. So it's going to do these different steps, the compilation step, the packing step, and it's going to publish the function in the portal. So in the meantime, I want to talk about the next service, that is Azure Logic Apps. Azure Logic Apps, as I told you before, it's a visual designer that you can use to stitch together some components inside Azure. This is very, very powerful because you can create super functional solutions and create them without coding or with less code. For example, when you need to, I don't know, maybe you need to send some email or you need to create some task in another platform when something happens in your application. Of course, you can do it the same way that you have done it in the past. Download, for example, the SDK and type all the code and compile and what have you. But with this kind of applications, the Azure Logic Apps, you can do it very easily. Let's see how. So let me see if this was published. Is it published completed? Okay. And I'm going to see if I have my function right here. Func. So I think this is the one that I created right now. Anyways, I'm going to create the Azure Logic app. I'm going to search for Azure Logic. I have it right here in my saved list. And I'm going to choose this one and click on Create. As you will see, it's very easy to create this kind of solutions, to create fully functional and very interesting scenarios. Of course, I have to say what's the name of this Logic app. This is my second Logic app because I have another one, and I'm going to reuse my Update Conference 2018 resource group that I created, and I'm going to select North Europe as well. So the portal is going to create that Logic app, and it's going to deploy it to my resource group. And when it finished, it finishes, I'm going to see the visual designer. Okay, so this was fast. Let's go to that resource. And as you can see here, you can select a bunch of different pre-built templates for your Logic app. There are like 200 different connectors built in that you can use in your Logic app to connect things like a Lego game, you know, when you select one piece and connect it to the other. And let's see what we can do right here. So I'm going to start with the blank designer. This is the designer of the Logic app. I'm going to select, for example, Twitter. Twitter is one of those components that are registered and pre-built in the platform. So as you can see, if I select Twitter, I'm presented with a particular trigger. The trigger, as you can recall, is the thing that fires the function. So this particular trigger is fired when a new tweet is posted. There are a lot of different connectors. For example, if you use Google Tasks, there are different triggers. For example, when a new task list is created, when a new task is due in the task list, etc. And for example, if you use Todoist or you use Wunderlist, okay, there are like hundreds and hundreds of different connectors, and this is very important. This is very powerful because you can do different functionality for your applications in a very easy way. So I'm going to select this one. I'm going to sign to my Twitter account. I'm going to let the application, I'm not going to do this in live because I need to, it's a two-factor authentication, but I want to show you something that I created before. It's this Logic app. Where is it? It's this one. This one that I created previously because of time restrictions. As you can see, it's just like a workflow. Do you remember Windows Workflow Foundation? The product that came with .NET 3 when Windows Presentation Foundation was released, and Windows Communication Foundation, where there was this product, Windows Workflow Foundation. It was fantastic. Sadly, it was killed by Microsoft, just like Silverlight and those kind of sad stories that maybe you remember right now. So this particular Logic app says that when a new tweet is posted with this particular hashtag, update conference, it's going to check each minute in my Twitter account for that particular hashtag, and it's going to send the tweet to another service that I stitched together, that is the text sentiment analysis from the cognitive services from Azure. It's going to check if that particular tweet is positive or negative, And if it's positive, it's going to insert a new card in Trello. I don't know if you use Trello. Trello is this software. It's a Kanban board. It's very powerful and it's free and it's awesome. So as you can see, I have this live, this list, this positive list, and this negative list is being updated in a lifetime, in a live fashion. So if someone tweets about update conference in a positive way, it's going to create a card in this list. And if someone tweets something negative about update conference, it's going to create a card in that list. So, of course, it depends on what you call negative, because if you see this particular tweet, friends don't take their friends' pictures without asking them to pose, I think it's not that negative. Of course, you have to decide what is the threshold for that sentiment. This is from the cognitive services side of things. And if it's false, well, if it's not positive, it's going to create a card in the negative list that I just showed you. So another service that I want to talk about, and of course, as you can remember, this is the, according to me, seal of approval, is the Azure Container Instances. Actually, I think this is an awesome product because you can just take a Docker container and run it in Azure and expose it through an endpoint. I think there was a Docker session before this session. I'm sure there was this session. Anyways, so Docker is this platform to create and run and manage and orchestrate containers. If you can see here, I have two images in my local Docker registry that is running inside my machine. So, for example, if I want to run Tomcat, the Tomcat is this web server that is based on open source technologies. I can just Docker run the port. Let's expose the port 8080, and the name of the image is Tomcat, something like this. Actually, I don't want to type because I can mess things up right now. Docker stop 785. I'm going to do this. I'm going to run Tomcat, and I'm going to inspect my local host 8080. It was 8080, right? 80. I'm sorry. It's 88, right here. So something is going on here. Anyways, I don't want to run it right in my machine. I want to create the container in Azure container instances. So I'm going to stop the process, Docker stop 28, and I have it right here. What I'm going to do is use the Azure command line interface, and I'm going to pass the parameter container. This is for Azure container instances. I'm going to create a new instance of the container in this particular resource group, and I want it to be named Tomcat Demo 1 based on this particular Docker image. And I'm going to expose the 8080 port, and I'm going to be sure that the IP address is public. This is what is happening right here. So I already did this, and we can inspect this particular container instance if it's running using the script. Let's see if it's still running. Yeah, it's running. So I'm going to just open Tomcat -demo North Europe Azure Container.io port 8080, and it's running in an Azure container instance. This is very powerful because when you want to just run a container, let's say that you need to do something in a container, but you don't want to create a Kubernetes cluster or an Azure Service Fabric cluster, and you don't need anything else but run the container, you can do it this way. And of course, Azure Container Instances is a serverless thing as well, because you pay what you use as well. It's a micro billing way of payment as well. And let me show you another one because I have 5 minutes. I don't know if you read the news about the cognitive services being containerized, so you can download the Docker container images for Azure Cognitive Services. This is huge. I don't know why Microsoft is not pushing this. It's a new thing. Maybe it has like 1 week or 2 weeks ago. It was released. So you can download the Azure Cognitive Services Docker images to your computer. And I did that right here. As you can see, it's 1.4 gigs of a container image. And I'm going to expose it as an Azure container instance in Azure. So I do this. So I'm going to create a new container instance in my resource group called Update Conference 2018. And I'm going to pass some parameters, some environment variables. And basically, that's it. So if I go to the sentiment demo North Europe Azure Container.io port 5000, as you can see, this is the Azure Cognitive Services sentiment analysis running inside a container, inside Azure Container Instances, and I'm paying by the second. It's huge. It's huge. And of course, if you need to do this with this particular cognitive service, you can do it on premises. You can run cognitive services inside your on-prem network and solution. This is amazing. In healthcare, again, this is huge because the cloud is forbidden, but we can use now Azure Cognitive Services in the on-prem solution. Or maybe in the agriculture space, where you're in the middle of nowhere, there is no connectivity, and you want to run some analysis, some machine learning models, you can do it right now inside a Docker container. So just to let you know, just FYI. So if I just type here Swagger, you can see the API is very, very, very easy. I can just request this status right now, and it's valid, and I can use, for example, Postman to send this request. Rodrigo's food is awesome, and send this particular text in order to analyze the text in that Azure container instance. And the response is that is 0.9 positive. So it's super positive. And if I type Rodrigo's food is disgusting, send, and of course I get back the sentiment analysis response. And I agree, it's disgusting. Okay, so last demo, Azure Service Fabric Mesh. It's an on-demand serverless microservices platform. And you can use Service Fabric Mesh to create microservices in a micro-billing and automatically scaling fashion as well. So in order to do this, I want to run this particular script. And I think I did that before. I don't know, maybe. I think so, right here. What it's doing is taking this web application. Of course, it's running right now, but I don't want to spoil the party, but the time is over. When it deploys, it's going to containerize a web application, and that container is going to be deployed to Azure Service Fabric Mesh, and it's going to be exposed in a public IP address, like this one. You can just type that particular IP address in your smartphone or in your laptop, and you're going to see the live application running. So you can try it. This is the IP. Anyways, I'm going to talk more about Service Fabric Mesh tomorrow, and I'm going to talk more about microservices tomorrow, because I'm going to talk about lifting and shifting existing web services to microservices. So, if you're interested in microservices and Service Fabric, come back tomorrow to my other session. It's at noon as well. And I think that's it. As a summary, serverless is awesome, but of course it's not for every kind of project. It's not for every kind of a scenario. But the tools and the products and the services are there for you to use. And of course, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You can just mix and match serverless topics in your solutions. Dziękuję.